Welcome again to the Thrive Beyond Cancer Summit. My name is Tekquiree, and today's guest is GG. She is an author, a speaker, and an advocate for self-discovery through writing. Welcome, GG.
Hi, Tekquiree. Thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you for joining us. I had the pleasure of meeting and working with GG in 2017. It was a month after I finished chemotherapy, and I discovered her Words That Heal online workshop, and it was life-changing, and it helped me find my voice, and I appreciate you very much for that. It's just taking me back to like how I just opened up about my life and what I was going through. And so I want to know, I never asked you this actually. What was the inspiration for creating Words That Heal?
That's a good question. I had been, at the time that I created the course, I had been self-employed, like working at this writing career thing for about 3, probably going on 4 years at the time. And writing had gone from being a hobby, slash therapy tool, slash just creative outlet and all of that, to becoming my career. And in the process of that happening, I became so focused on creating content and thinking about writing as this career thing that I had gotten away from what originally the purpose that writing served for me, which was to just my emotional well-being and that creative outlet and that tool for healing that that's what it started out as. So I was going through some tough times around then, and I was trying to get back to, and sometimes it's sad how it takes us to go through tough times before we go back to our foundation and the spiritual tools that we know are going to bring us back where we need to be. And that's where Words That Heal came from. I was just getting back to journaling, and it's almost like I needed to relearn. I went to the library and got literally got books on writing to heal. Like, what do I need to do to feel better? Because it was like writing had become this thing where every time I sat down to write, I was thinking about an audience. I was thinking about like, well, how do I title this so that people will like, it's like, oh, I couldn't make myself stop and just get back to just writing for me and figuring out what was really going on with me. Not just what did I want to share with other people, but like what was really going on with me. So through all of that reading and just self-work, I had all these ideas and that co-creation process happens when you surrender, I think, and follow your curiosity, follow that intuition that tells you that you have some work to do. And through all of that, I just came up, I was bursting so much. I said, I'm going to put this into a course, and I want to share this. And so that's where that came from.
That's so awesome. Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for doing that, because it helped me and so many of the other women who were a part of that workshop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just felt safe being there.
Yeah. Yep. So many of us need that.
Yeah, because it's interesting too, because even though we have family and friends, sometimes we feel like we can't share what we're really going through or what we're really feeling, which is very interesting. And I think that even when we are writing, sometimes there's that hesitation too, like, should I write this down?
Yeah.
Do I really want to go there? Which is kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
We wouldn't want to be honest with ourselves to ourselves.
It's writing brings forth the awareness that that all of us are walking around with so much going on inside that we're not acknowledging. And we think because we feel it and we know it's there that we're accepting it and we're surviving despite the fact that we have these things inside of us. But when you sit down to write and really surrender to writing and these things come out, it's scary because you're like, okay, once I release it, once it's out, then I really have to actively deal with it. Yeah. And I think we're scared of that. And when it comes to friends and family, our friends and family, they love and support us, and they all serve different purposes and connect with us in different ways. But there's something about connecting with other people who love words and connect through writing. And even if it's a stranger, there's just a certain undeniable connection there. And so when you get a bunch of that into a workshop or into a room, it's just the creative energy is like astounding, and you find yourself sharing things that like you wouldn't just share with a stranger, you know. But it's about the creativity, and it's not about any, it's like all of that kind of goes out the window. And I think that's the most beautiful thing about a lot of these workshops is that people will come in and say, it's so often I hear, I've never shared this with anyone before. And they find themselves sharing it. And I think that's a beautiful part of writing. And I think that's a beautiful part of writing in a community like that, that it really, really helps you dig those things out that and find that it's not, the fear is bigger than the revealing of it, really. You know, the revealing of it feels good.
Yes. You feel so like free.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get all of this out. I can move free. I'm free.
Yes, it feels good. It's the resistance that is so uncomfortable, just that fear of like, you know, and then after it's just like, and then that just makes you more and more confident for expressing yourself in your everyday life and, you know, in your work, whatever it is that you need to use your voice for, or that you need to be more self-aware for. Yeah. It helps with that. It really does.
Yeah, I totally agree, because once I started writing how I'm feeling and not caring if anyone found my notebook, because that was the thing. I was like, if someone finds this, they may be like, she's crazy, or what's going on with her, you know, or just that's how she really feels. And then I'm like,
yeah.
You know what? I don't care. Like, I can't keep carrying this around with me. This is how I feel. And then I started like getting more confidence with like, oh, actually, this is how I feel. And no,
Yeah.
actually, I don't want to do that.
Yep.
And this is what I'm going to do. And this is how I'm going to live my life. And I'm like, wow, you know, before I was like a little shy about it. And I'm like, you know, life is, we have no idea what's going to happen to any of us. I'm going to live my life.
Yes. And I'm going to speak my truth now.
Yes.
And know that it's okay, and that it's not, you know, and that honestly, it puts you more in alignment with the life that you want. So you're using your time and your energy and everything more wisely. You're not wasting a bunch of time with trying to meet other people's expectations, but sometimes it just takes something to unlock it. And so I think for us, and there's other things too, but in this case, it's writing. It unlocks that resistance. Mm-hmm. And then after that, it's like the floodgates and you have to stick to it, because like I said, I got lost in, down a path that, it's so funny because you can feel like you're on the right path and you jump this big hurdle, but you still have to do those things. And, just the general term for it would be self-care, to keep yourself on the right path, even when you've taken a leap of faith or you've overcome so many obstacles and you know better, you can still slide, because the world is so crazy and we're human, and, there's so many distractions. So I think that like writing is definitely an act of self-care. That's like, no matter what you do with it to share with the world, you also need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself, through writing and doing that self-reflection.
Yeah. And in your workshop too, like I learned that, well, for one, a lot of people are intimidated by writing, right? They think, oh my God, if I'm not a writer and what am I going to write about? Then they think they have to write like this book or, like this novel or this screenplay or whatever it is. But really, I remember like you were saying, like there's all these different things that you can actually write. Like it could be whatever your ideas are, or your thoughts, or your affirmations, or your gratitude, or a prayer, or a poem. And it's like, yes!
Yes.
Just get that out of you, whatever it is that you want to express. So why do you think that we're so intimidated by writing when it really helps us?
I know. I think that we grow up with writing something that we do in school, and something it's part of our academic development, and we're taught all this grammar and punctuation and structure, and this is the proper way to write this, and there's a place for that. But one thing about journaling, self-discovery, writing, none of that matters. So I always tell people that I work with, put all of that out for our purposes. All of that is out the window. It's really just about transcribing your thoughts and that's the hardest part, just transcribe your thoughts. And sometimes I get the most quizzical looks, like what? Like literally just write down what you're thinking. And then I try to teach people ways to writing exercises to be very strategic with that, just different ways so that you can start to notice patterns and themes, and you can start to notice stories that we tell ourselves with our thoughts that are affecting our behavior and how we feel, that we don't realize because we're so used to it. And we don't realize. And I remember one of the first books I read when I started reading personal development and self-help books in my probably early 20s. And I was reading them, but I liked the way I felt when I read it, but I wasn't really applying anything yet. I was just kind of at the beginning of trying to. And one of the first ones was The Power of Positive Thinking by Norman Vincent Peale. And I remember reading that book, and I remember taking notes and highlighting and just being like, oh my gosh, like this is so me. Because I realized like I didn't even know that I was such a negative thinker. I didn't even know. And so that was in my early 20s. Here we are almost 20 years later. And that's something I have to work at all the time. It's way better, of course. And I'm aware of it. And I know different ways to mindfulness techniques to help. But back then I just remember my mind being so blown and thinking like, when does that start? When does that habit, those stories we tell ourselves, like a story could be, I made a mistake. I forgot to pay a bill, or some mistake you made. And then this story starts, I never get anything right. I'm a loser. I'm always going to fail. I'm always going to mess everything up. And this whole story starts to cycle. And before you know it, like, you have these negative stories about every little thing that happens. And, so it's just about recognizing that and changing all of that. And through writing, even if it's just a list, even if it's just an affirmation a day, even if it's just a prayer a day, you're starting to empower yourself with your words and speak life into yourself instead of negativity, and it's a practice. You just really have to stick with it.
And it's amazing how this negative thinking or these stories that we tell ourselves come about. You're like, when we're older and we realize, like you said, what we're doing, and you're like, wait, that was negative. Like, where did that come from? How did I learn how to do that? And I'm thinking back, like, depending on what someone has said about a situation, it's like, okay, well, I don't want that to be me. So I need to make sure I'm this way. And then it's like, oh my God. And then you start thinking, oh, I'm a bad person because I did that, or I forgot. I forgot to pay a bill. I'm a bad person. You're
a bad person. Yeah, you don't deserve nice things.
Right. Like, I didn't think, like, really? Why am I so stressed out about that?
I know. We're so hard on ourselves. And if we don't realize we're doing it, like we don't know how much of a disservice we do to our own dreams, and how much we sabotage ourselves. And like, we end up feeling stuck because we're sending mixed signals, right? We're working hard and we have these, positive things we want to do in the world. But on the back end, we're sabotaging ourselves with the way we think, and sort of, just our energy not matching what we're trying to do. We're using our energy for too much negative, just old stuff that we need to actively release. So I think writing releases, exercising, the list goes on and on, like any type of self-care, and just really finding ways to separate from the world and connect with your inner self. If you're not doing that every day, then it's going to be hard to stay energetically where you need to be.
I was thinking that I was thinking back to like how when I wasn't doing that, like how could I expect my life to be good or in alignment when I'm not even, taking care of myself, not even going within the way I should to process what's going on with me, which is so easy for all of us to do. And it's crazy, but we expect our lives to just be well and go and
Yeah.
flow, and
Yeah.
really we're not doing the work to help that flow happen.
We're not, and we have to. It's not a set it and forget it kind of thing. It has to be maintained because we live in a world where there's distractions literally everywhere, inside and out, inside and out.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do. And a lot of times is, if we're ambitious women, and I talk about that a lot, and just, when you're ambitious and you have a lot of things you want to do and you have so many hats that you wear and you want to be every woman to everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's when it can be the hardest, because we know better. We know that certain things need to be done to take care of ourselves. But I know the trap I got caught in was just, I sort of made this idea of myself and this career, this life, this thing I'm trying to manifest. I became so obsessed with it that I made taking care of myself take a back seat. And I said, well, I'll take care of all those things when I get here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was all downhill.
Me too.
All downhill. That does not work.
But it's like, why? Okay, like, self-care is like really big right now, and it has been for like the last, couple of years. But it's kind of like, why wasn't this something that was taught to us when we were little? So of course now we're more mindful of it. So we're like, okay, well, I'm going to teach my child, or like all of these kids or even teenagers, make sure you take time for yourself. Like make sure you nurture yourself. But we saw that maybe a little bit, but we thought that, you know what I mean? Growing up, it's just all about work and just taking care of your family. And occasionally maybe someone will go get a massage or whatever, but that's it. It's more to it than that. And I think it's clicking for everybody.
Yeah, it's a shift happening for sure. And I feel like in so many ways for Black women, it started with the natural hair movement. I really feel like that was the genesis of a lot of it, because that inspired so many women to start creating their own products. And that in itself seemed to trigger the whole, like, paying attention to what ingredients are in your products. And then it became, taking the time to, oil yourself and make your products and have your hair day. It just seemed like it just progressed from there to, you start seeing more Black women talking about wellness and talking about mental hygiene. And it's beautiful. I'm so, like, blessed to live in a time where that's happening, because obviously it's something that I feel strongly about, with my, being very passionate about, like, emotional health and everything, especially for women of color, from my experiences. And also just that it was, like you said, it wasn't always that way. I remember discovering Audre Lorde and seeing how much she wrote about self-care for Black women, like, blew my mind. She was writing this in, like, I think, like, the 70s. And
wow, I need to go back and read.
yes. Oh my goodness. And she wasn't a name that I heard of growing up. I remember my mom was a reader. I remember her reading Alice Walker. Mm-hmm. I remember, even then though, I didn't see her really reading her nonfiction so much, or that it was more like The Color Purple. And so anyway, I'm digressing. But yeah, it just wasn't something in my household and growing up that was taught to me. And if anything, I got more of a message that taking too much time to yourself was selfish.
Yeah.
And you need to be taking care of everybody else first. And you need to make sure that appearances are in place first. And then maybe you could go. And my mom would, we had our little hair days and all of that, but it just wasn't prioritized or spoken of that way when I was growing up. So I always felt guilty growing up when I would shut the world out and just take time to myself and take care of myself. I always felt guilty.
Yeah.
Like I was doing something wrong, because that's just, I guess, the message that I got from my environment.
Yeah. And then now it's like, we know, like, how important that is. Like, you need that stillness,
yes,
solitude, because how else are you gonna just
recharge, right?
Recharge. Yes, that's the perfect word. Recharge.
Yep.
How else are you going to recharge if you're constantly going?
And you have to be aware that you do have to recharge, and that that's not a weakness
Yes.
to have to recharge,
Yes.
because that's another thing, especially with Black women. It's,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be able to survive and just go and go and go.
Yeah.
And if you can't, then you should be, you feel like some type of shame about it, because it's a sign of weakness.
Yeah.
And so that message is changing. It needs to continue to change.
Yeah. Now just keep adding more and more stuff on until you get burned out and you
Yeah.
can't do nothing, or you end up getting sick.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. That's and ultimately what's going to happen in some way, shape, or form.
And then you're forced to deal with
Slow down. Yes.
and slow down.
Yes. Or change your diet, or
Yeah.
just whatever it is you're overlooking.
Yeah. Yeah. So how has writing helped you heal? I know you have like an amazing story that you share. How has it helped you heal?
So, writing came back into my life. I always wrote as a child, and started writing again in my early 20s. Like I mentioned earlier, that's when I started seeking some deeper meaning in life. Like, I had done all the things I thought I was supposed to do, and I wasn't happy, and I wasn't in a good place. And going to therapy really triggered me to start writing.
Yeah.
And because she said it keeps coming up that you always got a lot of joy from writing, you need to get back to the things that have always brought you joy and made you feel like yourself. So, she just really inspired me to start writing. And it was around a time when a lot of blogs were coming out, and social media was becoming more of a everyday thing.
Mhm.
And I think whatever's in you is just going to come out, because I probably was on Facebook for a couple times with the small talk
Yeah.
before I was in there. I was on Facebook like writing these long, drawn out reflections on life. Somebody said to me, you should start a blog, because this is like, but in
Wow.
a positive way, like, this is
Yeah,
beautiful, but you really should start a blog because this is Facebook. So that's what I did. And it turned out to be a healing process for me, as well as a transformation in terms of what I imagined my life really could be. I was resigned to working in corporate America, making a good living, but not being passionate about my job. I
yeah.
was resigned to that, and taking care of my family. And so writing not only transformed my way of self-discovery, it also transformed just my view of what I could do in the world, not just for me, but like for other people.
Mhm.
And so I started writing about just things I had never faced before. I grew up with a mother who suffered from schizophrenia that was not diagnosed for, I don't, I, I don't know when the onset was with her, but I can tell you she wasn't diagnosed till she was about 50. I think she was about 50, 51 years old when she was diagnosed. So
Mhm.
growing up in that environment and never dealing with it, never learning about mental illness, never, always being afraid to admit it enough to even educate myself,
Yeah.
all of that came, it has to come out.
Yeah.
So telling those stories and realizing that by telling these stories, I was healing, I was stepping more into my true identity as a person, and just I could feel that transformation happening. And in the process of that, I learned that I could help other women do that for themselves too. And that was a beautiful revelation. Like, I could actually create a livelihood for myself and feel like I'm helping my culture and feel like I'm being obedient to what, God, has placed in me. So it was a beautiful thing. And I think I got so caught up in that,
Mhm.
that for a while there, like I said earlier, I stopped I stopped revering the writing itself and the just taking care of itself. And so I went through a lot of probably good, I don't even think I realized it while it was happening, but I was probably going through a cycle of like extreme anxiety and depression for like 2 or 3 years, just with this change in lifestyle. And then also my dad was really sick, and in that course of time he ended up passing away. So there was just so much going on, and I wasn't dealing with it. I was just tunnel vision. God gave me a message and God gave me this beautiful purpose, and I'm just gonna, I just wanted to be successful at it.
Yeah.
And so writing always it's always my foundation. And when I'm starting to feel lost, it it's my lifeline. to just my inner spirit, and reconnecting with God, and reconnecting with that baseline of just, I don't need anything to go one type of way. I just need to be.
Yes.
Right?
Oh my
And
God.
that's when the flow starts again, and you're just like, okay. Like I was trying to, we try to control everything, and it's so easy to get caught up, and just getting back to just being.
Yeah.
And everything flows. We make it hard. It doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah. You can say that again.
It's true. It's so true.
One of the most powerful things that you've said is when you've talked about like when something happens to us and we go like, why me?
Yeah.
And the power of like writing and not being a victim, not going into that victim mode. And it's interesting because I think when anything happens to us, I think the first thing is like, why me? Because you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe that this actually happened to me. Like, I'm going through this,
Yeah.
And I get like emotional thinking about this because a cousin of mine who's going through his own battle. I don't even know if that's the best word. I won't say battle, but his own journey with cancer. He told me, I remember this. He was like, why not me? And I was like, oh my God, the power and the strength. Like I remember his face. I remember the tone in his voice. I remember like just how powerful he looked, the strength. And that actually is what, when, me going through it as well was like, gave me the strength to be like, okay, why not me?
Right. Like I have the tools.
Yep.
I have the faith.
Yep.
Right. And that's a powerful moment. And I would imagine it would lend itself to every aspect of your life, any obstacle you face, feeling just even more empowered.
Yeah.
That what is it? To whom much is given, much is required. Right? So if we can celebrate all the blessings in our life, then we need to also be able to step up to whatever challenges we come up against in our life,
Yes.
So it's that alignment. It's like, it always comes back to alignment with me lately, where I'm just like, who do I say I want to be? I say I want to be this brave, courageous person who chooses love in every situation. So to be that means I can't, be why me, self-pity, and why this is, just knowing that I have the wherewithal, that divine awareness inside of me to be able to face whatever, and have faith that it's for a reason.
Yep.
And just like seeing other people, that's you said that was your uncle?
My cousin.
Your cousin. Seeing other people, my mother-in-law is going through cancer right now. It's her second round of cancer. And, just talking to her and talking to her family and my kids, and just trying to, keep tabs on how they're doing with it. And my daughter just says, like, grandma's always in such a good mood, and she's laughing, and, like, she doesn't seem scared at all. And I said, well, grandma has really, or like, her faith is like titanium. Like she has very strong and powerful faith. And that's very inspiring to me, because sometimes whenever we all still have those moments where we're like, even if it's just like, I can't find my keys, I'm like, why me? Why can't I be more organized? And I think, I'm not going to let anything small throw off my day, or anything that my mind creates. My mind creates a lot of tragedies. Like daily, my mind creates tragedies. And one of the ways I've been using to manage that is just thinking about, God gave me this imagination, right? And this is what I'm doing with it. And how, my mother-in-law is in this situation where I'm sure her mind can create all kinds of scenarios that would not have her in such great spirits, but she's not doing that. And it just really inspires me, like, for my day-to-day stuff I go through, and my uncertainties and all of that, like, that's not, we never know. We never know if we have a day. We never know if we have 20 years. But like, I don't want to spend my time
Exactly.
imagining terrible things and bringing myself down.
Yeah.
For a while there, I felt like I couldn't control it though. And that's where I think I got really nervous about that. Like I felt like I know better. I know like the faith is there. And that's where that question of, for a while with me was like, have I lost my faith? Because my anxiety and my depression is so bad. And that's where I think a lot of times too with Black people, we think that it's a sin or something to be afraid and to have trouble with anxiety or to have trouble with sadness, or negative thinking. And we were raised that church and God is supposed to fix all of that.
Yeah.
And while I do think that spirituality obviously plays a huge part in all of this that we've been talking about a lot of this time, there's still that element of, just taking care of yourself, your mind,
Yeah.
right? Like your mental health and going to therapy and figuring out
Yeah.
what your unique situation is so that you can learn how to take care of yourself.
Right.
Right? Like it doesn't help when people tell you, well, go pray, honey. Like it'll, just have faith. And you're having panic attacks and you're like, can't control,
Right.
you know, you don't know why you're sad. You're thankful, you feel blessed, you love God, but you're still this like heavy sadness. And you think it's because there's something wrong with your faith.
Yeah.
Right? And it is two separate things.
Yeah. And then, God send you to someone who can help you, like you said, get back to that joy that he placed in you for writing. Here's this person who's like, well, maybe you should start doing that, because like we can be in a state where we totally forget, like, oh my God, that brought me so much joy. Well,
Yeah.
why did I think of that?
Yeah.
Because now we're going to somebody who's going to help us get back to ourselves.
That's right.
And God uses people to help us do that. And yes, we can continue to pray, and yes, we can continue to have faith, and just know that those people are going to show up in our lives to help us.
That's right. The helpers are going to come. The
Yeah.
helpers are coming. We just need to ask. We can't be afraid to ask for help. We can't say, God, I need this, and fully expect for it to show up. Just be looking for that answer to show up, for that sign to show up.
Because we're not meant to do it alone.
Nope.
Which is why we're all here. And
That's
we all
right.
have gifts. So we're all going to help each other on this journey.
That's right. And when it comes to writing, it's important to remember that as well, because that you mentioned earlier how writing can be so intimidating and so hard, because we're thinking about, first we have to get past our own judgment of ourselves, right? Then if you want to share it, you've got to get past the idea that other people are going to judge it when they read it. But the important thing is you have a message inside of you, right? You have a story, you have something that is compelling you to want to write, right? To want to come out. So even if it's just for you, even if it's for someone else, it's letting that judgment go, lets the floodgates go. It lets all that resistance fall away, so that you can really fully stand in your truth and know and trust your intuition, right? And let that message, whatever that is, come through you in whatever way it's supposed to be. Sometimes, like I was speaking, I guess my last workshop was the end of January, and I said, because a few people will say, well, I'm not really a writer, but this was like, the best experience. And I said, the experiences you have with writing, you might not ever share what you've written, but it could impact what you go and do in your life, right? So you write, you might never share it, but then you might go and, I don't know, start a nonprofit about something that you discovered that you're passionate about through writing. You just never know. So just be obedient to that, pull you feel towards writing, and you don't know where it's going to go. Just like you have to surrender to that.
Yeah, that's so good that you said that. Like, to break it down that way, that it's not like you don't have to write for other people.
Yeah.
Or for an audience. It's like for you to get that clarity.
Yes.
To go forth and do whatever you're called to do. Wow. Girl, that's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
That's really deep. But we
really
just bypass it because we're like, oh, we're thinking about that paper we got to write. But like you said, back in school,
Yeah.
It's really like, no, it's about you. Like, how are you feeling right now? What's
Yeah.
inspiring you, you know?
Yeah. That's why I think it helps people when you bring it down to to a hands-on thing, like, are you using your full voice, right?
Yeah.
If I ask you what's something that you don't want people to know, it's so interesting the things that people say,
Yeah.
and or that they write down if they're asked that question in a workshop, and they realize, like, I'm like, well, you're not using your full voice, right? Because a lot of times that thing that they don't want people to know is a very powerful thing, right?
Yeah.
That could change the course of their life or somebody else's life, and they could just, it's usually transformational things, but they're holding it inside.
That just brought up something like, I'm like, oh, what is something I want somebody to know? I'm like, oh,
Hmm.
whew, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, or that or something that you have a hard time admitting to yourself. Like, those kind of trigger questions can just really start a lot of truth telling.
Yeah.
Just being honest with yourself. And I think that many of us who have trouble trusting our intuition, we
Mm-hmm.
have trouble being honest with ourselves. So therefore, we don't trust when that intuitive voice comes. We don't we don't trust it because we're so used to not being honest with ourselves.
Oh my God. What a disservice to ourselves when we're like,
Hmm. Yeah. You have to
oh,
heal that relationship to where you can trust yourself again, and and that comes back to flow. When you trust your intuition, you can flow because I'm going to make this decision based on how what my intuition tells me, and I know that no matter how it goes, you have to have that abundant mindset that, like, there's going to be you might have to learn something from it, but
yeah.
it's going to be something that is true to who you are and what your path should be, as opposed to, I went through a period when I was feeling very separate from myself, that I could not make decisions about anything because I just did not trust myself.
Yeah.
I trust myself. So that's when you hear so many people say they feel stuck, you
Yeah.
know?
And denying sometimes what you're feeling, like
Hmm.
trying to acknowledge that that's how you feel.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't want to acknowledge it. It
You're
makes you uncomfortable,
miserable.
or it might make someone else uncomfortable. So you're just like, I'm not going to deal with that.
But that's not a good way to live because then it's like you're just miserable all the time. You know,
Yep.
you're not being honest with yourself or honest with other people. So it's kind of like you're just walking on eggshells.
Hmm.
Another thing that you've said is you said that writing is an act of prayer in itself. Can you break that down for us?
Absolutely. That I got that idea from two places. There was a girl that I used to follow, or no, that I still follow
Mhm.
on Instagram, at Sonya, but it's spelled Saunyaa. And
Mhm.
she had a prayer challenge, and she would do 30 days of prayer. Just writing your prayers for 30, just a 30-day prayer challenge. And usually she would put a theme with it. Maybe you're praying for someone that you had an argument with, or you're praying for um, a man in your life, or there was always some theme to go with it. And I think that might have been the first time that idea of writing prayers was presented to me, and I loved it. And I found it very healing, and for someone who had gotten away from, not from praying, but praying in the way I was taught growing up, I had gotten away from that. It was a way for me to connect writing, which was already a spiritual experience to me, but it was like there's different voices that come out of you when you write, and there was a certain voice that came out of me when I wrote a prayer. And I was like, wow, it's just like really amazing the things that are coming out of me through this. And then I also, in that book that I read, Writing to Heal, she talked about writing to God and to calling. Sometimes we're raised a certain way when it comes to divinity, and whether we say God or spirit or whatever, and writing was a place for me to reconcile that. So that was a practice that I had. Then most recently, I was presented with the idea of writing, Dear God, speak through me.
Mm,
And using that prompt,
I love that.
other things come out of you. Like, right? So in one sense, you're writing to God, and then in the other prompt, you're asking God to write through you.
Mm,
So these are just things that they just bring different voices out of you. And I think there's just something really magical about writing when you really are just open to it,
yeah.
and just seeing like that there really is more. going on inside of us. Then we think, we sit and we think, and so many of us consider ourselves to be overthinkers. We sit and think and think and think, and we're always in our heads.
Yeah.
But when you write, it just comes out in these it's like the ultimate like co-creation with whatever spirit, that thing that, that I am that is inside of us. So I think that writing is definitely a form of worship, because you are surrendering to who you really truly are. You're letting all those pretenses go. You're being obedient to that voice inside of you. It's an act of self-acceptance. And like when you surrender all the worldly stuff that says you need to be admired and accepted, and you have to, when you let all of that go and just write your soul, like who you really, really are, I feel like that's the ultimate form of worship, because you're saying, okay, I accept myself the way God made me, and this is who I am on this page.
Yeah.
No matter how vulnerable I feel sharing that, because in this skin, we still have a cover. Even we walk out around the world and, our spirit shines through, but we have like a cover. We can still mask ourselves, So having something like writing is a way where you can't mask. If you're really surrendering, you can't mask anything.
Yeah.
And it's going to come out. And, I think that that's really healthy and really a form of worship to surrender to that.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. Writing is a form of worship. And that God can speak to us through writing. Like,
absolutely,
you can start writing down. We do this sometimes in like our prophetic. I'm in a prophetic prayer group, and we're praying, and then all of a sudden God like starts speaking to us, and we're just writing down what God is telling us, and it's like, wow, okay, this is really, really, it's powerful.
it is. It's supernatural. It's supernatural. It just is.
But we don't think about that though. But a lot of times, we don't know. It's like so much stuff that we're not taught again, that we're learning though. So it's a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so then we can help the next generation or those people around us be able to, I guess it's just like growing, as we grow, everything around us grows. So
it grows. Yep. And we teach and we share and we pass it on,
Yep. Which is amazing.
Yeah. And we have that responsibility. When you become enlightened, you have the responsibility to share as much of that with others as in whatever way, in whatever unique way is for you,
Exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Wow. So how can we create our own writing practice? Like you said, writing is self-care. So what are some of the tips that you would give us, the audience, on any type of writing practices that you have, how to start a writing practice?
Sure, yeah. I think the number one thing is to not make this a difficult task that is so far out of reach that you'll set the expectation so high that, so for example, if I say you need to write every day for 30 minutes, to go from not writing at all or writing every now and then to trying to write every day for 30 minutes is probably setting yourself up for, for that to not work out. So I would say start small. If you're trying to start a writing practice, start with something like literally like 5 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. And I would say take your phone, set the timer for 5 minutes, grab a journal, get yourself a pretty journal, right, that you like to write in, a pen you like to write with. I recommend writing, but if typing is your thing and you want to keep like a Google Doc of just your journal entries, whatever works for you, whatever feels good. Take 5 minutes a day. Try to make it the same time every day. And if you miss a day, no big deal. Don't say, oh, I quit now. Just pick back up wherever, wherever, just pick back up the next day, or be flexible with the time that day and say, okay, maybe I didn't do it in the morning. Maybe I'll do it at night. Maybe I'll do it in the car while my kid's taking their practice, and I'll just write a few words on my phone. So set your timer for 5 minutes. And for that 5 minutes, just write your stream of consciousness. And that means just write your thoughts. No judgment. No, you don't have to say anything profound. You might find yourself venting the whole time. I can't believe that this happened today, and da 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 da, and just keep writing. Don't pick up the pen for 5 minutes, even if you have to stop for, switch to a minute. Well, I can't believe the time's not up yet. I'm just going to keep writing, because like literally do that for about 5 minutes a day. And you will see over time that writing and what comes out of you will evolve, and you'll start noticing things. And I always tell people in my workshops, go back and read those entries and circle things and highlight them. If you see a phrase that you're like, what was I? Look at what I was thinking that day, or look at what I said that day. Highlight it, come back to it, reflect on it. Maybe use that as a prompt for another writing session. If you have trouble with the blank page, right? I definitely think writing prompts are a great way to go. You can get books of writing prompts. You can go online and get writing prompts. I do writing prompt challenges, and at some point I'll tell you guys where all my information is located online, and you can use resources that I have available. Sometimes the blank page can just be very intimidating, and we don't know what to say, and it's just like, I thought I wanted to write, but now this blank page is just staring at me. Use writing prompts. Use like really soulful questions that you're just not going to get asked day to day, or that you're not going to think about day to day, that really make you soul search and think about how to answer those questions. Earlier, Tekquiree mentioned how I said, write your prayers. If praying is something you do every day, take 5 minutes to write a prayer every day. Write a list. And I don't mean your grocery list, although sometimes my grocery list does come out when I'm doing freestyle writing, because that's just the way my mind works. But even just do a list of gratitude. Do a list of things that I want to release, things that are bothering me that I want to release. Sometimes writing it down is a way of like getting it off of yourself, and just writing it down, and you feel better. Questions that are kind of circling around in your mind that you need to answer, but you can't seem to make a decision on, write them down, and maybe when you're done, you look at it and you say, God, okay, these are the questions that I have that I need help with. Ask for help, right? Like, find your own unique ways of using writing to communicate with the divine and with that inner connection inside of you. It's amazing. And don't judge it. Don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about sounding clever or rhyming. Like, don't worry. Don't let any of those distractions get in the way of these writing exercises, and just make it that commitment. Try to do it the same time every day if you can, and just make it a part of taking care of yourself every day. Just like you might exercise or have a cup of tea, just take a few minutes and write. Start with 5 minutes, and then let it evolve from there.
Okay, if you guys aren't following Gigi, you have to follow her on Instagram, because everything that you post just be hitting me like right in my soul and my spirit. I'm like, oh my God. But I love it because it makes me feel like I'm not alone, And
Yeah.
so I love that you're fully expressed and that you keep expressing yourself, because it's helping all of us. And we appreciate that, We know that we're not alone.
That's right. That's right. And it's like constantly paying it forward, constantly paying that, keeping that's like that creative energy flowing back and forth. And we all need it, and we all inspire each other by being true to that,
Thank you so much for being with us today. And I appreciate you. I appreciate you for helping me heal on my journey.
Oh my gosh, it's a blessing to me. So thank you so much for just giving me that feedback and reaching out and staying in contact. And I look forward to keeping in contact with you for years to come.
Yes, me too. Oh, thank you, love.